A lonely, hopeless loser stuck in a dead-end job suddenly dies from a heart attack and is reborn as the child of a noble with godlike abilities. The story begins with an ordinary, unattractive loser living in Japan and working a dull, meaningless job. One day, while heading back home, he unexpectedly suffers a heart attack and dies on the spot. In the very next instant, he opens his eyes and realizes he is no longer in the same place. Instead, he finds himself lying on a bed, staring at the face of a stunningly beautiful woman. At first, he assumes he must be in a hospital, but that thought quickly disappears when he notices a flying dog casually drifting around the room. A maid then walks in and congratulates the blonde baby, and that is when Ars catches a glimpse of his reflection and understands that he has been reincarnated as a child in an entirely different world. 3 peaceful years pass as Ars grows without any major problems. During this time, he learns how to read and write, while also absorbing a massive amount of knowledge about the world around him. He discovers that the land they inhabit is known as the Summer Fourth Kingdom, which was once divided into 7 separate kingdoms before one of them launched a war and conquered the entire continent. Within this kingdom, Ars is born into the family of a noble lord who governs a small village town called Lamberg. He also learns that magic exists and is widely practiced in this world, which excites him more than anything else. Unfortunately, his young age prevents him from learning magic just yet, making it an unreachable dream for the time being. His daily life is extremely luxurious. He lives in a massive mansion, surrounded by numerous servants who cater to his every need, while the household chef prepares delicious meals for him every single day. Another unusual aspect about Ars is that he seems to possess a mysterious ability that no one else is aware of. Wanting to confirm it, he heads to the training hall where the household guards and aspiring soldiers gather to practice. Everyone is delighted to see him as he takes a seat and observes the training. That is when he notices a man getting completely overwhelmed while trying to learn spear combat. Ars activates his special ability, which allows him to view the stats of anyone he chooses. He sees that the man has D-rank proficiency with both spears and swords, but surprisingly holds a B-rank talent in archery. Ars immediately approaches him and asks if he has ever tried using a bow and arrow. The man laughs it off, not taking the suggestion seriously, believing archery is meant only for cowards and women. Ars insists that he should at least try it once. Under normal circumstances, the man would have outright refused, but since Ars is the future lord, he reluctantly follows the order and picks up a bow. As everyone watches closely, he fires an arrow, and to everyone's shock, it lands perfectly in the center of the target on his very first attempt. Thinking it was just luck, the man continues firing arrow after arrow, only to realize that every single shot hits the mark. This finally makes him aware of his natural talent for archery. He gratefully thanks Ars while others begin asking how Ars knew that this so-called loser would excel at archery. Ars chooses not to reveal his hidden power and simply claims it was based on instinct. The only drawback of this ability is that Ars cannot see his own stats, which disappoints him slightly, but he eventually brushes it off and returns to the mansion. Later that evening, during dinner, he sits across from his intimidating father and secretly checks his stats, discovering that his father has A-rank abilities in every category and is strong enough to defeat 10 B-rank swordsmen simultaneously. His father asks whether Ars was the one who told the loser to try archery, and Ars honestly confirms it. His father then explains that it is an essential skill for a future lord to be able to recognize talent where others cannot. After that conversation, Ars begins studying how rulers govern their people and slowly learns how cruel and unforgiving the real world truly is. The leaders of the Summer Fourth Empire are completely corrupt, while farmers and the poor are revolting across the land due to unbearable living conditions. At the same time, politicians actively work against the citizens by employing police brutality and other underhanded tactics, making this world eerily similar to America. Ars realizes that if this continues, the entire continent will be consumed by civil war, and he will likely be forced to lead his own forces into battle. This deeply frightens him, as he is not yet a warrior and doubts whether someone like him can truly protect his family and the people of Lamberg. The following morning, Ars secretly sneaks out of the mansion and wanders through the village marketplace. Despite wearing a cloak, people easily recognize him, and a woman even asks if he is out shopping. Ars fat shames her and continues on his way, focusing on searching for individuals with extraordinary abilities using his magic eye. He scans several villagers but finds that they are all worthless losers with no promising future. After overusing his ability, his eyes begin to water, forcing him to sit down and rest. Suddenly, a loud disturbance catches his attention. A door bursts open, and a racist white woman violently throws a young man into the street, shouting that she has no work for someone like him. Ars does not initially recognize his race but hears people calling him a Mousin, claiming he is filthy and disgusting. Ars then recalls reading about them in a book, which explained that Mousen originate from a distant continent and were brought to Summerforth as slaves. The young man collapses on the ground, starving and defeated. Ars approaches him and offers him a piece of bread, surprising the man, who introduces himself as Ri. Nearby onlookers question why the future lord would help a Mousen. Although Ri is initially suspicious, he slowly accepts the bread and eats it greedily. Ars uses his magic eye to examine Ri's stats and is completely stunned. Ri possesses multiple A and S rank skills, making him incredibly powerful. This reminds Ars of his own father, Lord Raven, and he immediately realizes that Ri has the potential to become one of the strongest individuals in the entire kingdom. Ars's eyes light up with excitement, which creeps Ri out, causing him to thank Ars and walk away. Ars follows him into an alley, ignoring Ri's demand to be left alone, and finally reveals that he is the son of Lord Lant. He offers Ri a job as his personal bodyguard, bribing him with the promise of good food. Ri eventually agrees, and they return to Ars's mansion. Once inside, they sit at the dining table as luxurious dishes are placed before Ars. He looks happily at Ri, only to notice that the racist maid serves Ri an old plate filled with beans. She explains that she cannot give a Mousen the same food as the future lord, and the butler adds that Ri should leave immediately after finishing his meal. Ars is shocked by the blatant racism in the country, but unlike a stereotypical white American girl, he actually takes action. He drags his chair next to Ri and insists that they eat together. When the maid and butler try to stop him, Ars firmly orders them to shut their mouths, declaring that Ri is his guest. The maid reluctantly serves Ri proper food, which he happily eats. Afterward, Ri reveals that he was raised by a group of mercenaries from a very young age. However, during a recent battle, all of them were killed, leaving him alone in this cold and merciless world. Feeling sympathy for him, Ars brings Ri to his father's chamber and announces that he wants to hire Ri as his bodyguard. His racist father takes one look at Ri and immediately refuses, claiming that Mousen are useless and lack real ability. Ars boldly challenges his father, insisting that his instincts tell him Ri has God-given talents unmatched by any ordinary person across the continent. Eventually, his father agrees to give Ri a chance but declares that he must pass a test. The condition is simple yet terrifying: Ri must defeat him in combat. Ars becomes terrified, knowing that his father is an absolute monster and one of the strongest swordsmen on the entire continent. He tries to argue that the match will not be fair, but his father completely ignores him and begins walking toward the training grounds. He requests a pair of wooden swords as guards, and other people gathered there start calling Ri the Mad Wolf. Raven then explains the rules clearly, stating that if Ri manages to land even a single hit on him within the allotted time, he will be accepted as a guard. However, if he fails to do so, he must leave the village immediately. Once the timer is set, the duel begins, and Raven charges forward with a devastating slash. Ri narrowly dodges the attack but instantly realizes that even though it was a wooden sword, that strike could have easily killed him. Raven launches another attack, which Ri barely manages to block, still struggling to comprehend just how strong and fast this lord truly is. Big Daddy continues pressing the assault relentlessly, while Ri focuses solely on blocking and parrying every strike. This terrifies Ars, yet he notices that everyone else looks shocked, as no one has ever been able to endure even a single attack from Lord Raven before. Raven intensifies his offense and eventually lands a blow on Ri's shoulder, knocking him to the ground. To everyone's astonishment, Ri stands back up and decides to fight with everything he has. His expression sharpens as he charges straight at Raven. Raven attempts a counterattack, but Ri dodges and slides beneath him, circling behind and using the angle of the sunlight to his advantage, momentarily blinding the Lord. Even so, Raven manages to block the strike, but this marks the first time anyone has ever come so close to landing an attack on him. Just as Ri begins to find his rhythm, Raven announces that the time limit has expired. Despite that, he declares Ri the winner, stating that no one has ever pushed him this far or nearly landed a hit before. Ars is overjoyed and congratulates Ri, while his father praises Ars for identifying yet another talented individual, remarking that he truly seems to possess a God-given ability. The surrounding guards and soldiers crowd around Ri, asking for advice and begging him to train with them later. Later that day, Ri is given formal attire to symbolize his acceptance into the household. He kneels before Ars and swears his loyalty to him. Several months pass after Ri officially joins Ars and begins working at the estate. At first, some of the workers treat him poorly due to his skin color, but over time, they slowly warm up to him. He spars with the soldiers and teaches them how to sharpen their skills more effectively. Ever since he began receiving lessons from Ars's tutor, his intelligence skyrockets, making him the smartest person currently living in the household. Ri also ends up charming the very maids who once despised him, winning them over with his cheerful personality and good looks. Over the past few days, Ri and Ars begin holding study sessions together, reading about the continent's history as well as the current political situations within each territory. They learn that the Summer Fourth Kingdom was once an unmatched power and the strongest kingdom by far. However, Ri explains that the kingdom is now in severe decline. The old king has passed away, and his successor is only 8 years old. According to Ri, real power now lies in the hands of the politicians surrounding the young king, who manipulate him to seize as much authority as possible. Because of this corruption, the government can no longer rule effectively, resulting in numerous uprisings across the nation. As a result, regional lords and dukes have begun ignoring the central authority and are maintaining their own private armies to deal with these conflicts. Ars realizes that their county has not experienced any revolts so far, but the fact that his father trains every day and prepares to recruit more soldiers suggests that trouble may arise soon. He decides that they must find more talented individuals like Ri who could help them if war breaks out, even though he desperately hopes it never happens. Ars asks Ri where he believes the war would begin if it were to occur, and without hesitation, Ri replies that it would likely start in the neighboring county, whose lord is extremely old and frail. According to him, the lord could die at any moment, and conflict would erupt over succession. Ri explains that the lord has 2 sons, and while the elder son is technically the rightful heir, everyone knows that the younger son is far more capable and would make a better ruler. If the succession issue is not resolved before the lord's death, the brothers will clash, forcing the entire kingdom to choose sides. Ars asks which side his father would support, and Ri answers that they would most likely back the older brother, as the law recognizes him as the legitimate heir. Ars reflects on the fact that his father is still alive and capable of handling these issues, yet he worries about what could happen if something went wrong and his father were injured. Ri advises him that they should continue searching for exceptional talent to strengthen their position and ensure safety. Ars fully agrees, and the two prepare to head to a nearby town to scout for potential recruits. As they cross the front yard, Raven stops them and instructs them to be on the lookout for a skilled mage, explaining that a powerful wizard can often turn the tide of a losing battle. Ars knows that his father has no talent for magic and remembers how Raven once gave him a magical gem in hopes of awakening his latent abilities, only for Ars to discover he had no magical aptitude at all. After that, his father never asked him to try again. They leave their small county and travel to the neighboring town, which is far larger than their village. The people there appear much wealthier than those back home. Ars tells Ri that he hopes his own county can one day become like this town. Ri simply smiles as Ars begins searching the crowd for talented individuals. Unfortunately, he cannot find anyone with even above-average abilities and grows tired, sitting down to rest. Ri reassures him, explaining that this town has around 50,000 residents, 10 times the population of their village, so they are bound to find someone eventually. As they walk through the wide streets, Ars notices a narrow, filthy alley where poor people are sleeping out in the open. He is shocked, having not expected such poverty in a city filled with wealthy citizens. Ri gives him a lesson about reality, explaining that anywhere with great wealth will also have people living in extreme poverty. This makes Ars reconsider his dream of turning his village into a city like this one. Some time later, they enter the main marketplace, and Ars's eyes sparkle as he sees countless items for sale. Suddenly, he hears a man loudly advertising dragon eggs imported from another continent. Ars immediately becomes excited at the thought of owning a pet dragon that he could ride whenever he wants. He eagerly asks the seller how much they cost, and with a sly grin, the man replies that each extremely rare egg costs 1 silver coin. Ars instantly declares that he will buy 3 and begins searching his bag for money. Before he can finish, Ri shoves him back and presses a dagger against the seller's throat. Ri accuses the man of daring to sell counterfeit goods to a noble, an offense punishable by death. The seller insists that he has done nothing wrong, but Ri explains that importing goods from other continents has been banned for the past year, meaning the eggs are either fake or illegally smuggled. He also points out that dragon eggs are extraordinarily rare, questioning how such a lowly fool could possess so many. Ri prepares to kill the man, but Ars stops him at the last second. Ri immediately regains his composure and begins apologizing repeatedly to Ars, accepting whatever punishment he deems fit. Ars tells him not to worry about it. Later, they sit down for lunch, and Ars decides to buy some dessert from a nearby stall. Suddenly, a pickpocket crashes into Ars, snatches his money pouch, and sprints away. Ri instantly grabs Ars and chases after the thief, who darts through the crowd. Ri manages to pull off the thief's cloak, revealing a young girl with blue hair. The girl rushes into an alleyway, and when Ri reaches it, he finds her surrounded by several thugs. One of them punches her, knocking her to the ground. As Ars rushes forward, trying to stop them, the leader becomes furious at him and swings a punch, but Ri instantly catches his arm and drives a punch straight into his stomach, knocking him unconscious. The other two men immediately charge into attack, but Ri quickly overwhelms them as well, slamming them to the ground and forcing them to flee in fear. Ars then looks at the girl using his magic eye and discovers that she possesses S-rank magical abilities. He is completely stunned, as her magic stats are unbelievably high. Without hesitation, he asks her to join him and become his vassal. Ri warns him that the girl is a thief, but Ars does not care and promises her a comfortable life with steady pay and good meals. The girl looks down at Ars and coldly tells him that she would rather die than serve a spoiled noble child like him. According to her, all nobles are evil beings who enrich themselves by exploiting the poor. She explains that she was once taken in as a slave by a noble, but she escaped, which is why those men were trying to capture her again. Ars attempts to reason with her, telling her that she would make an outstanding mage, but she replies that she has never even attempted to use magic before. Ri realizes the conversation is going nowhere and asks her to return the money pouch, which she does without protest. Suddenly, several small children rush into the alley and gather around the girl. It turns out she has been caring for these orphans and feeding them whenever she can. Feeling guilty, Ars gives her the pouch back, and as evening falls, they all part ways. Later that night, Ars sits on the balcony, wondering if he will ever encounter such remarkable talent again. Suddenly, he hears children crying and screaming for the thief girl. He and Ri rush downstairs to ask what happened, and the children explain through tears that 3 men attacked her and dragged Char away. Meanwhile, Char is taken across the city, where the thugs throw her onto the floor in front of a slave trader. They begin beating her, but she endures the pain without shedding a single tear. The slaver orders the men to be careful with her face, explaining that the perverted noble who plans to buy her wants her to remain as beautiful as possible. The goons agree, but one of them notices the money pouch Ars gave her and snatches it away, only to realize it is filled with coins. Char suddenly leaps up, grabs the pouch back from the thug, and tries to escape, but the men are faster. They catch her again and pin her to the ground. The slaver tells her to accept her destiny, warning that even if she escapes, she will live a miserable life on the run and eventually die a horrible death. Before he can crush her spirit any further, the door suddenly bursts open, injuring the man guarding it as Ri storms inside. He blocks the first punch effortlessly and deals with the other goons with incredible ease, even throwing his knife at the man standing next to the slaver. The slaver quickly orders everyone to stop so they can talk things out. At that moment, Ars rushes into the room and asks Char if she is alright. She is shocked to see him there. The slaver quickly realizes that Ars is a noble based on his clothes and manner of speech. Calmly, he asks what he can do for him, and Ars demands that the girl be released immediately. The slaver responds that he cannot do that, claiming he is breaking no laws since slavery is completely legal in this county. Ars tells him that he does not care about the legality, but Char interrupts, urging Ars to run away if he wants to save himself. Ars turns toward her and checks her stats again, only to discover that her ambition value is 0, meaning she has completely lost hope for the future. He begins rambling about how everyone deserves hope and a future they can strive toward. The slaver finds this speech hilarious and laughs, stating that the only future a slave can hope for is serving a good master obediently. Ars snaps and tells him to stop laughing, insisting that adults are meant to protect children. He declares that Char alone has the right to decide her future, not filthy slavers like him. Char is deeply moved by these words. She reflects on how she cannot remember the last time she cried. Ever since she was young, she had survived on her own, wandering the streets, hiding in dark alleyways during rainstorms and freezing winters, watching others live easier lives. She was forced to steal just to survive, and even then, she could barely sustain herself, let alone anyone else. Seeing someone finally stand up for her overwhelms her with emotion, and tears begin streaming down her face. The slaver, however, has had enough. He claims that he was speaking politely only because Ars was a noble, but now the child is interfering with business for no reason and is far too young to act this righteous. Several goons descend the stairs and surround them as the slaver threatens violence. Ars simply looks at Ri, who tells him not to worry because everything is under control. One of the thugs tells Ars to shut up, saying he hates loud children, but Ri grabs the man by the throat, lifts him into the air, and slams him into the ground. He declares that they have made a fatal mistake by insulting Lord Ars and that they will now pay the price with their lives. Ri draws his dagger as one of the hooligans smashes a bottle and orders the others to surround him, believing Ri is alone. This proves useless, as Ri dodges every attack with grace and precision, slashing several men across the abdomen and throwing his knife into another. Before he can continue, one thug grabs him from behind with a blade, but Ri immediately slams him into the ground. Terrified, the the slaver calls for the mages. Two mages rush in and chant basic fire spells, launching them at Re. He effortlessly cuts through their magic and beats them down as well. Completely panicked, the slaver finally summons his trump card. A massive man storms down from upstairs while guzzling ale, asking what all the noise is about. The slaver explains the situation, which enrages the brute as he prepares to throw them all out. Char warns Ars that this man is extremely dangerous and urges him to run, but Ars calmly checks the man's stats and tells her it will be an easy fight. Just as he predicts, Re avoids the first attack by swinging from a chandelier before dropping down and kicking the man in the face. Enraged, the brute charges again, but Re is far too skilled and powerful. He ends the fight with a clean uppercut to the chin, knocking the fat man unconscious. By now, the slaver is terrified and claims that what they are doing is illegal. Ars pulls out a pouch overflowing with coins and states that he will buy the girl. The slaver argues that Char has already been sold to another noble, but Re steps forward and tells him they are taking her regardless. He explains that the slaver can either accept the money or stay broke and deal with the wrath of the other noble himself. Faced with this choice, the slaver caves in, takes the money, and legally sells Char to Ars. By the time they leave the slaver's office, morning has already arrived. Before they can go anywhere else, Char says she wants to show them something. She leads them up a hill, where Ars struggles to climb, looking just like me, but eventually reaches the top. There, they are greeted by the most breathtaking view of the town spread out below. She explains that this hill has always been her secret spot, a place she comes to whenever she feels sad, and she wanted to show it to them as a sign of her gratitude. Ars quietly takes in the breathtaking scenery while Re hands her a magical locket so they can measure the true strength of her magic. She places it around her neck and nervously tells them that she does not believe she has any magical ability, as she has never attempted to use magic before. However, the instant she chants the spell, an enormous surge of mana erupts from her body, forming a gigantic fireball that detonates in the sky. The explosion shocks everyone in the town, including Ars and Re. Afterward, she meets the orphan children once again and promises that she will visit them as soon as she can before setting off on the journey back to Ars's home. When they finally return, Ars introduces her to his father, who initially assumes that Ars has brought home a new kitchen worker. Ars explains that she is a powerful mage who would be extremely valuable on the battlefield, but his father immediately rejects the idea, stating that women belong in the kitchen, not in combat. To demonstrate her worth, Char unleashes an incredibly powerful fire spell into the sky. Raven is completely stunned and instantly changes his attitude, welcoming her into the Lent family. They all head inside together, ready to face whatever adventures await them. The following day marks 3 years since Ars recruited Char as his vassal. During this time, his father has participated in numerous battles, both large and small, winning every single one with ease. Although the overall atmosphere across the continent is grim due to constant warfare, the morale of the soldiers in this county remains high. This is thanks to Raven's exceptional battle strategies and Char, who has grown into a beautiful woman with overwhelming power on the battlefield. No one ever believed that a single mage could turn the tide of war, but she proved them wrong. Since then, Raven has begun recruiting more mages under her guidance to further strengthen their standing army. In addition to this, Ars now has 2 younger siblings, a set of twins, 1 boy and 1 girl. When he checks their stats, he sees that despite their young age, both already possess several A rank and S rank abilities. Ars continues searching for more talented individuals but has little success for quite some time. Eventually, Re informs him that he has gathered information about 2 hunter brothers who are rumored to be highly skilled. Ars immediately becomes excited and insists that they go meet them to verify whether the rumors are true. A short while later, Ars and Re head into the forest to find the small hut where the hunters live. On the way, they are suddenly stopped by Char, who is sitting on a tree branch casually eating a sandwich. Ars explains that they heard about a pair of hunters who recently moved into these woods and are on their way to meet them. Char tells him that she has nothing planned for the day and decides to accompany him as his escort to ensure his safety. She takes her job very seriously, positioning him securely between her chest like 2 airbags to protect him in case of an accident. Re becomes jealous and sarcastically remarks that maybe she should walk instead, as the horse is already burdened by too much weight. Char fires back, telling him that she has been fighting wars and delivering results, so he should show her some respect. While they argue, bushes nearby begin to shake, and a wild boar suddenly charges out, frightening the horse. Before it can do anything, an arrow flies through the air and kills the beast instantly. 2 men then emerge from the dense foliage, pleased with their successful hunt. When they notice the guests, they quickly approach and ask if everyone is alright, explaining that they did not realize anyone else was nearby. ARS reassures them and asks if they are the Hunter brothers who recently settled in the area. They confirm that they are, prompting ARS to quickly examine their stats. He discovers that their abilities are fairly impressive, well above average, though not extraordinary. The brothers invite them back to their home, where their father lays out a large serving of freshly hunted meat on the table. He apologizes if the meal is insufficient, explaining that he never expected the Lord's son to visit. ARS smiles warmly and says that it is more than enough, while Char eagerly enjoys the feast. The father asks ARS about the reason for his visit, and ARS replies that he has heard stories about his son's hunting skills and wanted to see them for himself. After evaluating them, ARS states that he wants the brothers to join the Lent County Army, as they could be extremely useful. The father is overwhelmed with joy, hardly believing that his sons might become high-ranking soldiers. While ARS asks about the youngest son, Char notices a small boy trying to sneak away with a piece of bread. His father scolds him and tells him to introduce himself properly. ARS initially thinks nothing of it but decides to check the boy's stats anyway. What he sees completely stuns him. The child possesses over 100 intellect and is an S-rank tactician. ARS spits out his drink and starts coughing, realizing that such intelligence is legendary and doubting that anyone in the entire kingdom could rival him. The father apologizes, explaining that unlike his older brothers, Rose is clumsy and unreliable. However, ARS's eyes sparkle as he declares that he wants Rose to become his vassal. This shocks both the father and the brothers, who cannot believe what they are hearing. The father urges ARS to reconsider, insisting that Rose would only be a burden. Ignoring this, ARS kneels in front of the child and excitedly asks whether he would like to work for him as his vassal. Rose looks up in fear, assuming that they want to force him into battle. He begins crying and refuses, saying that he would die immediately. His father scolds him for speaking disrespectfully to a noble, but Rose runs away and hides in his room. ARS feels discouraged, saddened by yet another rejection. The father apologizes and explains that ever since Rose's mother passed away, the boy has isolated himself in his room. Unlike his brothers, he never practices archery or wood chopping, making him a poor hunter. ARS responds that physical strength is not everything and insists that Rose's intelligence makes him perfectly suited to be a tactician. Determined not to give up, ARS tells the father he will try again. He enters Rose's room and finds the boy reading a book, but Rose immediately starts crying when he sees ARS. ARS gently calms him and assures him that he means no harm, then asks whether he enjoys reading. Rose explains that his mother used to read to him and that this is the only book they have, which he rereads whenever he misses her. ARS sweetens the offer by telling him that his home has a massive library filled with countless books. This finally catches Rose's interest, though he asks if he will be allowed to take one book with him. ARS happily agrees. Later that day, they return to the mansion along with the three brothers. Rose begins crying when another child tries to play with him, so ARS asks Char to give the older brothers a tour while he escorts Rose to the library. The boy is instantly mesmerized by the enormous collection of books and eagerly starts pulling them from the shelves. ARS says that he also needs to study and will check on him later. Several hours pass, and ARS suddenly wakes up, realizing he fell asleep while studying. Panicking, he rushes to the library, worried that Rose may have run away. Instead, he finds Rose asleep among piles of books. Tells ARS that the boy is extraordinary, explaining that he learns new words instantly and thinks incredibly deeply. ARS checks Rose's stats again and sees that they have already increased significantly, which amazes him. Soon, the older brothers arrive and start mocking Rose for being surrounded by books, claiming that he cannot even read. This shocks ARS, who asks what they mean. The hunters explain that aside from their mother, no one in the family knows how to read. As hunters, they never learned, and Rose only heard stories from his mother before she passed away, but she never had the chance to teach him. Rose eventually wakes up, and ARS asks him how he managed to learn how to read. Rose explains that he learned simply by listening carefully to what his mother said and matching her words with the shapes printed in the book. This completely shocks the brothers, who point out that Rose was only 2 years old at the time, so they cannot understand how he could possibly remember it. Rose then drops a shocking revelation by stating that he can remember almost everything that has happened to him since the very day he was born. The following day, ARS decides to help build Rose's confidence and tells him that hunting does not rely only on archery, and that making traps is another important skill he can learn. Rose responds that he had already thought about creating traps before but never had the confidence to try, so ARS encourages him to give it a shot. Sometime later, the old man arrives in the jungle and is stunned to see a massive trap set up in the middle of the area, while the older brothers excitedly explain that Rose built the entire trap by himself and that several boars are already caught inside it. Rose explains that he discovered male boars are angered by the color yellow, so he painted the hanging door of the trap that color, causing the boars to charge at it and become trapped. In addition, he hung a special herb around the perimeter to keep the females and young away, since they dislike the smell of the plant. This would prevent overhunting the young boars, which could reduce their population and eventually lead to extinction. Rose looks eagerly at his father, hoping for approval, but receives none, which makes him feel even more saddened. That night, Rose sits alone in his room, blaming himself for his mother's death because she became ill after giving birth to him. He cries quietly by himself until he overhears his father and brothers climbing up onto the roof to drink together. The brothers ask their father why he has been so strict with Rose, and the father begins to cry, admitting that it is his fault for always being harsh simply because Rose was poor at hunting. He explains that he is acting cold toward Rose on purpose so that Rose will come to hate him, feel he no longer needs his father, and leave for Lord Ares's estate, where his talents will be properly valued and he can live a happy life. Rose hears everything and breaks down in tears, realizing that his father truly loves him. The next morning, Ares arrives to pick up the older brothers, assuming that Rose would never agree to come along. To his surprise, Rose rushes outside carrying a large bag and tells his father that he could never hate him. He promises that he will grow into a great man, return someday, and that they will always live together again. His father starts crying, and finally, all the brothers swear their oaths of loyalty to the young lord, officially becoming his vassals and preparing for the adventures ahead. 3 more years pass, and when Ars turns 9, his father falls ill. Ars asks his father to allow him to lead their army into the war in his place, but his father refuses. A year earlier, the Duke of Mission had died of old age and named his younger son as his successor. However, the older brother rejected the will, accusing his sibling of manipulating it to seize the title. Because the older brother had recently achieved impressive results in war, many nobles supported him during the succession conflict. This led to Mission being split in two due to a civil war, and the neighboring Duchy of Sates took advantage of the chaos to invade, making the situation even more unstable. Ars believes he must go to war, but his father tells him that there are more important matters to handle, especially since his fiancée is coming to visit. Ars panics upon hearing this, and his father remarks that he must have forgotten that he was engaged even before he was born. He hands Ars a letter from his fiancée, and Ars immediately rushes to inform his friends about this unexpected emergency. He is flustered because he never knew he had a fiancée, and now she is suddenly arriving. A maid quickly informs him that his fiancée is already waiting at the gate, and Ars nervously heads out to greet her. In his previous life, he never even had a girlfriend, so he is extremely anxious about how to act around his fiancée. The girl introduces herself as Lysa, and Ars is instantly captivated by her cuteness, until he notices that her diplomacy stat is 100 and her ambition is 80. He is taken aback and begins to think that Lysa might be a dangerous individual who could try to take over his family while pretending to be innocent and sweet. However, when she smiles at him, he immediately forgets about stopping her potential schemes and instead starts swooning over her. He invites her inside, and Lysa and her butler observe the servants rushing around to prepare a proper welcome. The butler nearly makes a racist remark upon seeing Ri, but Lysa stops him. She is already aware of Ri and his great accomplishments on the battlefield and orders her butler to apologize for his rude behavior. The butler apologizes to Ars, who calmly says it is fine. The maids then present Lysa with a bouquet of roses to welcome her, which she happily accepts. She walks around the mansion, complimenting the house and politely greeting every servant she encounters. Ars can only stare at her in amazement, unable to discern her true motives. Soon, they sit down for dinner, and Lysa points out that Ars has some sauce on his face. Ars becomes embarrassed and quickly wipes it off, thinking about how skilled Lysa is at communication and how easily he can engage in casual conversation with her. She is incredibly cute as well, and if he had not seen her high diplomacy and ambition stats earlier, he would have already fallen deeply in love with her. Lysa then comments that she saw the city of Lamberg on her way there and thought it looked quite lively. Ars replies that he would have loved to show her around if the weather had been clear, and Lysa says that it will be soon. Almost instantly, the rain stops and the clouds part, allowing sunshine to break through. Ars panics and asks Lysa if she can somehow control the weather. She denies it, explaining that she merely observed the clouds earlier and assumed they would pass quickly. Lysa then asks Ars to show her around the town now that the weather has improved, and he happily agrees. As they walk through the market, everyone greets Ars and asks about the girl accompanying him. He introduces her as his fiancée, and the women immediately begin spreading the exciting news. They soon come across two merchants arguing because one of them delivered the wrong type of magic stones to the other. Ars thinks that, as the heir of this land, he must resolve the dispute properly, or else Lysa might judge him incompetent and seize control of the territory. Suddenly, Char arrives and offers to eliminate both merchants in one strike to silence them permanently, but Lysa stops her. She immediately recognizes Char as the legendary mage and claims to be a huge fan. Lysa flatters Char, asks for a handshake, and successfully wins her over. After that, Lysa asks Ars to let her handle the dispute in exchange for a small favor later. Before Ars can even decide how he feels about that request, Lysa is already standing in front of the two merchants, telling them to stop fighting before they ruin their handsome faces. She introduces herself as Ares's fiancé, and the merchants immediately stop arguing and congratulate her. Lysa then suggests that the sound magic stone merchant sell his stones to her territory, since they do not have those resources there. She also offers the second merchant the fire magic stones he needs at a low price from her land, explaining that they have a volcano. She presents this as the perfect solution and gives Ars full credit for coming up with the idea. The merchants believe her explanation, thank Ars, and disperse. Ars uses the opportunity to remind them to always keep written records of their business deals. Afterward, Ars thanks Lysa, and they continue their tour. As evening approaches and they head back home, Lysa decides to collect the favor she mentioned earlier. Ars nervously waits to hear what she wants, but she simply asks what kind of girls he likes. He is stunned, unable to grasp her true intentions. He knows her intelligence far surpasses his own, but he decides to take the risk and answers honestly that he likes people who are sincere and openly express their intentions. Lysa smiles softly and says she will take that as a reference. That night, they enjoy a pleasant dinner, and Ars eventually goes to bed, still wondering about his fiancée's true motives. As he lifts his blanket, he is shocked to find Lysa hiding underneath it, but she quietly tells him to stay silent. Ars tells her that she is in the wrong room, but Lysa replies that she came there intentionally because she wanted to surprise him. She brings up their earlier conversation, reminding him that he said he likes honest people, and explains that she now wants to speak to him honestly. Ars pours tea for both of them to begin the discussion, and Lysa asks him what he truly thinks of her. The sudden question makes him spit out his tea, and he hurriedly asks what she means by that. Lysa then reveals that she possesses a skill that allows her to perceive a person's emotions even when they try to conceal them. She explains that when she first met Ars, the emotion she sensed from him was doubt. Lysa says that she tried to act friendly toward him in order to ease that doubt, but instead it only grew stronger, and he even asked her to be honest with him. She asks Ars what exactly he is suspicious about, and he realizes that all of this began because he had looked at her status. Deciding to be truthful, Ars admits that he can see various attributes of other people. He tells her that he saw her extremely high diplomacy and ambition, which made him question whether the kind behavior she showed him was merely an act. Lysa understands everything at that point and admits that she truly does have high ambition. Ars asks her what kind of ambition she means, and she blushes as she answers that every woman dreams of finding an outstanding man who will fall in love with her at first sight. Ars also turns red, and an awkward tension fills the air between them. He reflects that, as the daughter of a noble family, Lysa would indeed need an exceptional husband to prosper, and he wonders what she thinks of someone like him, the heir of a small territory. Lysa laughs and comments that she was able to read his thoughts perfectly just now. She says that his territory is indeed small, and that if Ars had turned out to be an incompetent person, she would have done everything possible to break off their engagement. This shocks Ars, however. Lysa then tells him that now she truly wants to marry him. She explains that although his family is currently weak, she can see his talent to grow strong and powerful in the future. She noticed that he is loved by his people and that everyone was genuinely happy when they learned he had a fiancé. Lysa says that this alone was enough proof that he is an amazing man, and she admits that she has fallen in love with him. Ars blushes deeply after hearing this, and Lysa wishes him good night before returning to her own room. Once he is alone, Ars panics and realizes that Lysa's ambition is actually quite adorable. Outside his room, Lysa is also flustered by the bold actions she took, sneaking into a boy's room and confessing her feelings, but at the same time, she feels incredibly happy about it. The next day, she returns to her own territory while reflecting on how the world of nobles is a filthy place filled with greed and deception. Nobles will use any means necessary to bring others down in order to rise themselves. Lysa has always been troubled by her ability to read other people's emotions, because most of what she sensed was ugly and unpleasant. She once believed that her power was a curse, until the day she saw a woman happily married to a strong and prosperous man. That moment made her realize that if she could also marry a man of great power and reputation, she might be able to escape that negative world. Because of this, she perfected the art of lying, pleasing others by reading their emotions, all while searching for a powerful family to marry into. At first, Lysa had no intention of marrying Ars because his family was weak, and her initial impression of him was not favorable either. No matter what she did, he only grew more suspicious of her. However, he eventually did something that completely won her heart. While they were walking through the market, ARS apologized for the rough roads hurting her delicate feet and even brought her ointment in case her shoes caused her pain. At that moment, Lysa realized that ARS was an incredibly kind person. Combined with the respect he commanded from his people, she immediately saw him as her ideal man and fell in love with him right then. Now, Lysa believes that ARS is capable and strong, but also kind, and she refuses to let that kindness become his weakness. As someone who will one day be the closest person to him, she swears to eliminate every obstacle that stands